Hey everyone, Rob from Southgate Media Group here. Before we get started with this podcast, we have a quick message. If this is your first time checking out the show, we love that you found us and we really hope you enjoy it. What we have to say is for the subscribers. If you enjoy our shows, would you please donate to help keep these going? We don't want to have to put traditional ads on these shows, but this does cost money. So we really do rely heavily on donations. To make a donation to the show, please go to our website, www.southgatemediagroup.com. Go to the page for the show, and in the upper right-hand corner is a donate button. It takes you right to PayPal, and you can donate whatever amount you want. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. And now, on with the show.
Use your powers for evil.
Your evil is mine.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Next Stop Everywhere, your favorite podcast about that man in the blue box, Doctor Who. I am Jesse Jackson, and joining me today, as always, is the man, Charles Skaggs. How you doing, Charles?
I'm not the man, but I'll take what I can get. Hi, Jesse. How are you?
I am good. We are talking Doctor Who, the movie,
Right.
or also known as the Fox movie, also known as
The TV
the
movie.
1996 TV movie.
Yep.
Right? It does not have a convenient kind of handle, does it?
No, but on the DVD case, it says Doctor Who, the movie. So let's just go
Yes.
with that.
All right.
That was
Um,
from 1996, as you said.
yes. And this will bring us up to the in our reverse the polarity, bring us up to the modern era.
Yeah.
And so we've kind of, I guess it's tougher to find some of the other earlier episodes, right? Of other earlier scenes. So, because we haven't done 1 and 2, right?
No, we haven't done the first and second Doctors, and
Okay.
I was kind of hoping that eventually, as we cycle through,
Yeah.
we would get around to those. I didn't want to start with the first 2 Doctors because they're in black and white,
Yeah.
and so I thought that would have been a little hard on you coming in to the classic era.
Right.
So I thought John Pertwee, Spearhead from Space, was a much better entry point, and you seem to agree with me. So
Oh, absolutely, I do. And in fact, there was a little bit of a homage to Spearhead in Space in the movie.
yes,
Which was kind of
yes,
nice.
there's a homage to several Doctor Who episodes in this story.
Absolutely.
So, and we can run down those as we talk about it.
Okay.
but-
So, quick thoughts. I had seen this before. Early in
Mhm.
my Doctor Who fandom, I had ordered the DVD from Amazon and watched it and liked it. I actually live tweeted me watching it. And this was really the first classic Who that I had watched. And I remember not being that impressed with it. I thought it was okay. And this time I loved it. I mean,
Awesome.
and we'll get to more details, but I really do think that, don't know if you know this, Charles, but they say when you're going to taste whiskey, scotch, or bourbon, that you
Mhm.
should take a small drop and put it in your hand and rub your hand and then smell your hand. And that kind
Okay.
of gets your senses ready to taste the alcohol. So here's 2 non-drinkers telling each other
Okay.
this, right? So, right.
And then you also smell like an alcoholic, but that's
so
okay.
you get your palate ready. And I think that this journey
Right.
has had me ready. I was in the mood to watch Doctor Who. I had it, and I just really, really liked this movie a great deal.
Well, good. I'm glad you come around on this story, because I know initially I was like, Oh man, this is a fun story, but it's
Mm.
not perfect. I know this. I'm aware the story does have flaws, and that's okay. But yeah, I'm glad to see you came around because I have really enjoyed this movie. This was the first glimmer of hope for Doctor Who fans that ever since 1999, because you got to remember that the show had been officially canceled for 7 years until this TV movie came along in 1996,
And,
and like it was intended as a pilot,
mhm.
like a co-production between Fox and the BBC. Unfortunately, the TV movie aired during a really big episode of
Yes.
Roseanne, so the ratings
Right.
weren't great, and Fox didn't want to pursue the project further, and so Doctor Who fans were left like, well, we didn't get a series, but at least we got to see Doctor Who again for another 90
I
minutes, and that was cool.
I watched the documentary that is on the DVD talking a little bit about that, which gave you a
Hmm.
really good perspective as a fan of what's going on, in its wilderness years, and how the BBC has actually kind of almost was disdaining their roots. This was the old show that they were kind of embarrassed
Hmm.
about and did not embrace, which I think is funny considering now then the cash cow that the Doctor is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, now they love it. Now they
Yes.
think it's the greatest thing since
Right.
sliced bread. Oh yeah, I was
Hmm.
always a fan of Doctor Who. Yeah, right, whatever. Thanks. But
Absolutely.
but there was, a regime change. So, over that time. So it just
Yeah.
took a while to get, the bad guys out of there and get some guys in that could appreciate it and
Yeah.
pushed it into the
And I
success that
think,
it is today.
not, this is just speculation on my part, but I'm sure there were people in the middle management and growing up that were Doctor Who fans and wanted that back. So it was kind of interesting. It A good story, and I really liked the Eighth Doctor. I'm not a fan of his clothes, the crushed velvet jacket, and the kind of scarf, and yeah,
Right.
yeah, and
The ascot,
his
yeah.
hair was a little
Or I
long
mean the
for
cravat
me,
cravat rather.
but
Yeah.
those are minor,
Mhm.
quips, minor things, because he really was kind of cool, and definitely I could
Mhm.
see why fans wanted to see him be the Doctor again. Now you and I have been very vocal about we would love him to get just a
Right.
one shot, just to show him to do another Doctor,
Yeah.
on TV. He's done, of course, and we'll talk about his audio adventures.
Right.
But
Well,
just a great Doctor.
well, he did return in the Night of the Doctor mini episode where we
Yes,
got to see his regeneration into the War Doctor.
right.
So he got his final moments. We got to see the Eighth Doctor finally got a regeneration sequence,
Mhm.
and it was just great after all that time. I mean, that was, geez, what, 17 years.
Yes. Were you
Since
spoiled? Were you spoiled, Charles? Did you know it was going to be him in the mini episode?
we knew there was going to be a doctor, but we didn't know it was going to be his doctor.
Okay. Good.
Like we didn't know we didn't know which
Yeah.
one.
Because
And
I was watching it just to set the scene. I wake up, in the mornings before I'm going to go to work, and I make coffee, I make oatmeal, and I check email, check the bank balance, kind of do a few things before I go to work every morning. And so the release, the mini episode was there, and so you click on it and watch
mm,
it, and
right.
I did a fist pump when he says, "I'm a doctor, just probably not the one you're expecting." And I was
Yes.
so flabbergasted, so shocked, and was actually retroactively bitter when I saw people, tweeting or posting Paul McGann returns as Doctor. I'm like, no, 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 you shouldn't spoil that, because that moment of hearing his voice and seeing him just was wonderful.
Well, I agree with you as far as the spoiling, but the problem was is that you gotta be a little forgiving for the fans because speaking as one of them, we were just caught up
Yeah.
in the moment. We were just like, "Oh my God, the
Yes.
Eighth Doctor's back after all this time! Huzzah!" I
Yes.
mean, we were just like, just excited as hell that
Mhm.
McGann was finally returning. I mean, we had listened to the audios, and we read comic book adventures and novel adventures, but to finally see him on screen again after all this time and be as awesome as he was in just 6 minutes and make you fall in love with the Eighth Doctor all over again was just a
Yes.
pure treat. So yeah, we were just people my generation, or at least my generation of Doctor Who fans, we were just like, this is awesome. Thank you, Stephen
Yeah.
Moffat, for making this happen.
So, listeners, if you go back to our feed, I interviewed Paul McGann last year at Comic Palooza, and he talks about the experience of filming this. And it is a really good interview. He talks about that it was top secret, that and that it was word was going to leak, and that's why Stephen Moffat, sent him a text saying, happy birthday, because it was released on McGann's
Right.
birthday. Happy birthday. Eighth has returned, and so you guys should check that out. Um, so so let's talk a little bit about the movie.
Yeah, that's why we're here.
Yes, indeed. The first thing that cracked me up is how different the inside of the TARDIS looks.
Right.
Um, you know, Capaldi's Doctor has a few more furniture in it,
Yeah.
but every Doctor I had ever seen at this point just had the console and no furniture,
Right.
no really chairs. There is just you stood around and to see the Doctor sitting in a chair drinking tea reading H.G. Wells was odd for me.
See, I adored that because, like you said, I mean, up till now, the console rooms were very, like minimalist, very stark, just barren. Just normally it'd be like, okay, we'd have the console, and then we had, like a hat rack in the corner. I mean, early in the Hartnell episodes, they had like a chair here, a table there, but not a whole lot of set decor. So when we get this kind of like hybrid of gothic meets steampunk, um, I loved it. I thought this is still, I think, probably my favorite TARDIS interior, just because I mean it's the TARDIS is the Doctor's home, and this actually looks like something he lives in.
Yes, I agree.
I mean, um, because you figure I mean, generally, he stands around the console, but I mean, what if it, like, say it's a 10-minute journey to Gallifrey and he wants to kick back and relax and enjoy the ride? Why not just pull out a book and listen to some cool jazz music and on the gramophone and just enjoy yourself?
Yeah.
And and I love the atmospheric quality of that. It's you've got these cool like girder type things around the TARDIS console. It makes the TARDIS console room look considerably bigger than what we've seen before. I mean, granted, in 2005 when we saw Eccleston's TARDIS interior, that's
Yeah.
huge. It's like a football stadium. So, but up till now, this was like the biggest TARDIS interior we'd ever seen, and it certainly didn't look cheap. And that's one of the things that old school fans like myself loved about it.
So how excited were you seeing Sylvester McCoy, and therefore you knew that this
Right.
was not a TV movie, this wasn't a reboot, this was continuity. This was your
Yeah.
Doctor.
Yeah. Until the modern era, there was still a lot. Even after the TV movie aired, there was still some people that thought, well, the TV movie doesn't count, even though you had Sylvester McCoy's Doctor regenerating into Paul McGann's Eighth Doctor. So, I mean, you finally got a regeneration sequence for the Seventh Doctor. As far as the TV movie was concerned, it was an official continuation. some fans were hoping that it wouldn't count when, around the time of 2005. I remember going to conventions and, like they would have the TV movie airing on TVs inside the convention, and fans would be like, "That doesn't really count, does it? That's just like a
Hmm.
reboot or something." Like it just didn't click in their head that this was the same Doctor Who for some people. For me, I thought yes, it's an official uh, continuation of the series. And especially with the Doctor regenerating, I think the Doctor's regeneration alone makes that important because we're finally saying goodbye to Sylvester's Doctor.
When how much hype was this before it came out, Charles? You and I have known each other for
Hmm.
years, and
Yeah,
you have always, as long as I've known you, have been a Doctor fan. So,
right.
how much press was there? How excited were you? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, this is the dark days before the
Right.
interwebs, so we got a lot of we were only getting news from magazines at that point, really. Or like you'd see maybe a newspaper article somewhere. Um, we knew it was coming. We, like Doctor Who magazine, the official magazine of the series, was, they had announced McGann's Doctor. Like you got the cover, like Paul McGann is the Doctor, um, and there was that building excitement because, hey, here it was. Like I said, what, 9 years and or excuse me, 7 years since the show had gone off the air, and it was just we were just there's that hope that like you're just praying. It's like, please be good, and then you're also praying like, well, if it's the pilot, please go to series
Yeah.
so we can have more Doctor Who. But alas, that didn't happen. But the I think initially when the movie TV movie aired, there was a lot of mixed reaction. I think generally fans loved McGann's Doctor. They thought he was a very good doctor. They just didn't think the story
So,
was up to
what was
snuff.
your feelings? And I'll preface that a little bit. I
Yeah.
don't know when I've talked about this, but I certainly talked to Karen and Lou about when Star Trek: The Motion Picture came out, driving to the town over because Lake Charles, Louisiana, wasn't the movie. There was only 3 movie theaters in Lake Charles, and none of the 3 had the Star Trek movie. So I had to drive to Beaumont, Texas, which is about 60 miles away, to see it. Me and David Fair in his Pontiac Sunbird, and we were we didn't want to say anything bad about the movie. We there was a lot of good in it, but there was some scenes that dragged, and too much of you know going in the cloud and all this different you know
Yeah.
it, but you were so into Star Trek that you didn't
Happy to
want to
see Star Trek
say
again.
it felt ungrateful to
Yeah.
nitpick it or complain about it.
Right.
So and now then
Right.
I can say there's certainly good things in it, and I certainly got
Hmm.
the franchise back. So your perspective, because I think the movie has aged well, and as far as because McGann, I think especially him coming back
Right.
for the 50th anniversary helps bring it back. But what were your originally thoughts, and have you changed your opinion on it over the
Well,
years?
my personal experience with this TV movie is that I was coming off the end of 1995 when my body had decided to practically explode my colon, and when my megacolon went toxic and needed to be taken out and rebuilt over the course of 3 surgeries for the first half of 1996. So, I mean, at that point, just before the TV movie aired, or really, well, around the New Year's before that, of 95, 96, I was concerned just, like, this could be it. I could be dying. There was a chance I may not have made it. And thankfully, I found out later that, even though I was like, say, 6 hours from death, because my colon was almost ruptured during the surgery and spreading poisons throughout my already weakened body that I almost checked out. But part of me had realized that um, like may not have been around, and if I died, then I wouldn't get to, because I knew that at that point the TV movie was coming. Right? No, I'm serious. I'm serious because
Yeah, no,
because
I
well, see,
understand.
the thing is though, it was one of those things that gave me hope to
Sure.
to press through those reconstructive surgeries, because it's like I got to get better. I got to build myself back up because I was weak and just sick from the surgeries and recovering, and I dropped down like to 125 pounds. So
Yeah.
so I needed to get myself built back up, and just knowing that the Doctor Who TV movie was coming, in May, that was just something that it gave me hope. It's like I could have checked out and not seen this at all, but I get the chance to see Doctor Who again. And so that was just that kind of uplifting positive thing. So that when I finally sat down and watched it, um, I did notice, like, okay, it wasn't perfect and it wasn't like the exact Doctor Who I envisioned it would be in my head. But I did love McGann's Doctor from the start. I thought he was a perfect Doctor, and there's a moment that I think we'll discuss later, the exact moment when he finds his Doctor,
Okay.
and I'm curious to see if you spot it. But he nails that moment, and just at that point, he's the Doctor, and you accept him. And even though Grace has trouble with it,
Hmm.
she eventually comes around, and she accepts him as the Doctor. But Eric Roberts' Master. Okay, he was definitely nothing like a Master we had seen before. For one thing, he's speaking an American accent, which was a little kind of threw us off a little bit, and he was a little kind of cheesy, cornbally, and he had some weird new abilities, like this whole snake-like appearance and powers that he
Hmm.
had. So that was a little disconcerting, and you weren't quite sure why they did that. But you liked Chang Li as a possible future companion, like with him and Grace maybe traveling with the Eighth Doctor later on.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of good homages to the previous Doctor Who stories that fans would appreciate. um, so from that perspective, it was I was happy with it. I
Okay.
was, even though it was flawed, it's kind of like, you didn't want to put it down, like you said, with Star Trek, the
Yeah.
TV or the motion picture. But for me, I was entertained. I was just happy to see Doctor Who again, and I was entertained for 90 minutes or well, 2 hours with commercials. But I was happy with it. So that was my experience.
Um, I've heard a few things. When I watched it today,
Hmm.
um, I'm watching it with clear eyes to a certain degree, and also because of what I've heard and what I've known. And so I certainly catch there's some plot holes.
Right.
But you know, the Eric Roberts is not as bad as I've heard as the Master. I mean, it's different, but it
Yeah.
was a it. I thought he did okay, and I liked Grace as a companion. I agree with you. The young guy was great, and this was pretty cool, very cool, and
Yeah.
certainly a it is a good story, and it kind of I like the fact they didn't coddle the audience. One of the complaints we're getting
Right.
now is, do we really need a third version of the Amazing Spider-Man in our lifetime, Charles? And God, please
Right.
don't do another origin. Okay, we get it. Uncle Ben is dead.
Yeah.
We're sad, but
Right.
let's move on.
Yeah.
Um, you
It's
know,
kind of the same thing with seeing Batman's parents getting killed
yes,
over and over
yeah,
again. It's like we know Batman's
yeah,
origin.
yeah. I mean,
You could
let's
tell other stories besides Batman's origin.
who, yeah, who going to this movie doesn't know Batman's origin, right?
Uh, Maybe younger kids. I don't
Maybe,
know,
but
but
so anyway, the I don't know if we want to go through scene by scene, but I certainly think we should talk about a little bit of it. Um,
yeah.
So why don't you take us through there,
Well,
and you
okay.
kind of lead us through, and I'll jump in when I have
Okay.
thoughts, and you can ask me
All right.
questions.
Okay. I'll try and hit the relevant
Okay,
points, or at least the points that kind of like reference things to
sure.
the past. So,
Because
so
I think it's a pretty decent story. I mean, I
right.
don't think it's a great story, but I think it's got a decent story, and there's enough, certainly enough action and a lot of
Yeah.
character interaction. So yeah,
It's a pilot
yes,
episode, so yeah. I mean, the really good stuff may have come
right,
later, but we never sadly didn't get
yeah,
that. So, all right. So, going into the TV movie, um, we start off with a pre-credit sequence with the Eighth Doctor doing a voiceover, presumably like he's talking about his past, and he's talking about the Master being put on trial by the Daleks. We're not quite sure why the Daleks are putting the Master on trial and on
yes,
Skaro, but and we're not quite sure why they have these like helium Dalek voices where they're like exterminate, exterminate, really high pitched voices this time instead of a much more menacing tone. It almost sounds like Smurfs inside the Daleks.
hmm,
Um, but the Master gets exterminated, and then he like requests that the Doctor take his remains back to Gallifrey. And that's our hook for the before the opening titles. The opening titles emerge, and we get like the Doctor Who logo that was actually used during the Third Doctor era is kind of brought back for McGann's TV movie. And we get our first symphonic arrangement of the Doctor Who theme as opposed to something
yeah.
synthesized.
That is,
So this was a big change, and obviously it influenced the modern series because with Murray Gold, his themes have been symphonic as opposed to
yeah,
electronic. So I think that was one of the things that Russell T Davies picked up when he was rebuilding Doctor Who for the modern era, and is like, okay, yeah, let's go with that. That kind
hmm,
of works for me.
absolutely.
It makes it more serious and more sophisticated sounding, I guess. But I miss the synthesizers, but that's me. Um, and like you said, we've had the Doctor reading H.G. Wells' The Time Machine,
Yes,
of course. Um, and he had previously met H.G. Wells in the Sixth Doctor story Time Lash, one of the worst Doctor Who stories ever.
was
It was pretty bad. It's probably the worst story of
that
of Colin
written by the
Baker's
couple
run.
that? Okay, okay,
No, that was not written by
okay.
the couple. That was written by
I
somebody
do.
else.
You
But
even know who I'm talking
um,
about when I say
yeah,
the
so
couple.
you can't. I know you're talking about Pip and Jane
Okay,
Baker, but no, they didn't write that one.
and I'm sure
Um,
they're very funny.
and you get this, and we right off the bat we get some references to the past. We get to see the Seventh Doctor using a sonic screwdriver, uh, which he didn't use in the TV series in the original series because he but we had the like the second Doctor's 500-year diary. We had the Seventh Doctor eating jelly babies, which Tom Baker made
Yeah,
famous during his era. So in we're already getting those references to the past, which was nice to kind of reassure classic Who fans that this is still the same show, just kind of updated
absolutely.
for 1996. The the uh, the TARDIS, like materializes after emergency landing thanks to the Master Ooze, and appears in Chinatown in San Francisco in on December 30th, 1999. This is kind of like the first time we'd really had a story set in America. There had been, well, actually,
I
take
was
that.
going to mention
Well, there
that
was
one.
the
Yes,
gunfighters back in the first Doctor era. Yeah, there was the gunfighters, but ever since the gunfighters, the Doctor
right.
really hadn't visited America, so
Hmm.
this was kind of a big deal. Um, then like we when the ambulance shows up to after the Seventh Doctor is shot, when he just walks out of the TARDIS into a
Yes.
gang shootout. And I don't know why he wasn't checking his monitor before he goes out there, unless he
Yeah,
intended to
and
die.
so I'm going to stop you there,
But
Charles. What did he die of?
yeah,
Is it the surgery they gave to him? Because it wasn't the gun shoots, right?
no, it wa- no, it wasn't the bullet wounds. It was when Grace is operating on him, and she's like working the probe, and she gets lost because the uh the insides of the
Right.
doctor, they're alien. So it's not the circulatory system that she's used to. The whole, or that when she's probing around in there, she gets lost because it's completely different. And so, and the doctor wakes up, and he gets dosed again with anesthesia. And so, that whole thing, it just kind of like just shuts him down. It just basically causes
Yeah,
him to
and a
go into
very
a rest, and he
interesting point
dies.
I thought that he talked about the anesthetic affected him in the regeneration. Uh, yeah,
Yeah, it almost,
yes.
he says it almost destroyed the process. So
Hmm.
yeah, obviously the anesthetic did have an effect on him, and probably, like, maybe he would have survived if it wasn't for that
So
anesthesia. We don't know.
this is fairly common that the doctor is confused during regeneration, correct?
Yeah, yeah, it's basically what fans have termed post-regenerative amnesia,
Right,
where yeah, he's amnesic for a while. We saw this recently with Peter Capaldi's 12th Doctor in Deep Breath, where
right.
he's not quite in full possession of his faculties, but as the episode goes on, he kind of recovers who he is and remembers that he's the Doctor, and can go on and deal with whatever threats facing him.
And that makes a lot of sense to me because you are changing.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of, he talked about had Matt Smith say, "I'm not fully baked yet."
Yeah, I'm
You
not.
know,
Yeah, I'm still cooking.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Which is one of my favorite Matt Smith era
Yes,
lines.
absolutely.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it makes sense because regeneration is this traumatic experience. So you would think that, okay, he can just shrug it off. Now, sometimes he does. Sometimes he just like hops up and like, let's go,
Yes.
but generally not.
Yeah.
And I think it should be like, I think he should have trouble with that.
And I think that is I think that's the continuity error, not the other words. I think the standard should be that it should take something out of him and it should take him a
Mhm.
while to adjust.
Right,
And
because it gives the audience the chance to adjust to the doctor as the doctor is trying to adjust to himself,
absolutely.
if that makes sense.
It does.
Wow, that's first time for everything.
Yeah.
Uh, the some other things that like we get when the ambulance with shows up with Bruce, Eric Roberts' character. Chang Lee puts John Smith on the admittance form, which is a nice nod to the Pertwee era. And then, like when they bring him to the doctor to the hospital, the X-ray shows two hearts, and the doctors there, they think it's, oh, maybe it's a double exposure, just like the reference to Spearhead from Space, which had that exact same, uh, you know, scene. I guess a similar scene. I wouldn't say exact same scene, but it had a similar scene.
Absolutely.
Uh, but and then we get to meet Grace, and there's a considerable emphasis with using Giacomo Puccini's Madame Butterfly as a theme, and especially during the doctor's death on the operating table, where it hits that final like note. Um, this is actually one of my favorite opera pieces. It's called Un bel di Vedremo. It's from Madame Butterfly,
Okay.
and generally it's been one of the best versions I've heard is by a singer named Renata Topaldi, and she's just superb in this note. And it's kind of done that way on the show, where it just hits that note just as like a climactic, and drives it home. And like that tune gets stuck in the doctor's head, so that when he regenerates and he wakes up and he busts out of the refrigerator, the morgue refrigerator, looking like Jesus with his long hair and in the sheet.
Yes, they went
uh,
from it is sticking in his mind, and but I love how they originally do Frankenstein, and that was a
right.
great scene. How they
Yeah,
mirrored
it's
that,
alive.
yes.
It's alive.
And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden they moved to the Jesus, symbolism. Yes,
Metaphor,
so
yeah,
yes,
yeah,
it
the
was
symbolism, yeah,
awesome.
yep. But the Eighth Doctor is when he wakes up, he's humming "Un bel di Verdremo." So it's like another just indication that this is the same guy
Yes.
from before. And so it's a good little device to kind of help reinforce the fact that it's still the same guy to new people that aren't familiar with the concept of regeneration.
Right.
I can only imagine what they thought for like, what is this dude? He changes from this little older man to like, a taller, younger guy with, like with the hair and everything. So what's up with that?
Absolutely.
Um, but we get the doctor going through staff lockers, stealing clothes,
Which
stealing
which
his,
is a common theme,
which
right?
yeah, I mean we've had Matt Smith's doctor do it, we had John Pertwee's doctor do it, so
Yes.
it's just it's a kind of a Doctor Who tradition.
Absolutely.
Um, that he gets what they're having like a New Year's masquerade
Right.
ball at the hospital, so he gets a hold of this Wild Bill Hickok costume. Thankfully, he ditches the cowboy hat
And yeah,
because it just and keeps the rather dapper looking,
uh,
like Victorian
yeah,
era
they
overcoat and the
they
cravat.
did show the Tom Baker scarf,
Yes, they did
which
show the Tom Baker scarf, so we got a nice nod
yes, it
there.
was.
And while this is going on, Chang Lee is going through the doctor's
Yes.
things, and so he pulls out a yo-yo, so we get the yo-yo again. And then he pulls out the sonic screwdriver and the TARDIS key. We get to see the TARDIS key again, and Chang Lee's like, "What is
Right.
this?" Because it's oddly shaped. But so there's more nice nods to the classic
So I was
fans.
not aware of the pocket watch. Did McCoy look at the pocket watch a fair amount, or
No, this is something that just worked with
okay,
McGann's
okay,
doctor, that he just adopted, that that he would look cool with
okay.
it, I guess.
Uh,
But I love pocket watches, so I was very cool with
Absolutely.
that.
And I love the TARDIS key. In fact, I wish they would still use that key in the modern era versus just a normal looking key. I love that
Yeah, I
look.
agree.
Absolutely.
Hmm. Yeah, and I don't. That's one of the things that I agree, that it looks like a normal house key these days, and it's not as
Right.
impressive. But that's
Hmm.
just me. Um, like we get Grace finally meeting the doctor in an elevator, and he follows her out to the parking lot, and she thinks he's completely out of his mind. He's walking around barefoot because he has no
With the toe
shoes,
tag still on.
with the toe tag still on from the
Yes.
morgue. And then like she gets in her car, tried to escape him, but he's already inside the car somehow. He just got in there. We're not quite sure
Right.
how. But and then he's in there, he's in the back seat, and he's yanking out the probe that was in his chest,
Yes.
that from when she operated on his previous incarnation. And so thankfully you got that out of there, because that would have been, like awkward. But you would think at that point she might be a little open to the idea that he might be the same guy, but even though he looks different, but she needs more convincing. So like he like they get all excited. He tells her to drive, so she drives him to her house. Like she finds that her boyfriend Brian's moved out, took a lot of stuff, including their couch or whatever, and the doctor, talks about like that the anesthetic almost destroyed the regenerative
Hmm.
process. Um, and then, like knowingly, that he kind of indicates that he might know her, because he talks about how she'll go on to do great
Right.
things.
This is something that we don't see as much in the modern era. The sly, I know your future because I'm a time traveler,
Hmm.
and that makes sense that you wouldn't know everyone, but if it's someone
Right.
significant, that was kind of a nice moment. And he did that a lot
Yeah.
in this movie, with the young kid, at the
Gareth.
ball and
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
things. So yes, very nice.
And that meanwhile, while this is going on, Chang Li enters the doctor's TARDIS, with the doctor's TARDIS key. Obviously, he's immediately freaked out, but there's no doctor there to tell him, it's bigger on the inside.
So nitpick,
So,
they don't use that line in this movie. Now,
right,
they kind of
right.
imply it when Grace talks about the techno babble and everything about when she
Yeah,
goes in there.
yeah.
But
Crossing the threshold, and
yeah,
there's like
blah blah blah.
dimensional
Yeah.
change, and yeah, exactly. So that was nice. And then, the doctor's just like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. Well,
Right.
whatever suits your boat or floats your boat. But the master's already inside there, and the TARDIS activates. Apparently, it likes Chang
Yeah.
Li. So the TARDIS, she's
And
cool with Chang
but
Li.
okay, huge plot hole. Why would the TARDIS let the master
Hmm.
in? How did the master get in?
Well, the master is a Time Lord. I'm sure he probably knows how to
I
get
guess
inside a
so.
TARDIS if he
Okay, I'm
wants
just
to.
saying it seems a little
Yeah,
convenient.
yeah. Well, maybe the master used the key up
Yes.
that was above the door, open the
I
TARDIS, and then put the key back.
I do think, how does the
Uh,
TARDIS going through time and space, does the key not fly off? I mean,
yeah.
it's
Well,
there's got to be a
maybe
cover,
there's a
right?
cover.
There's a little a
Yeah.
miniature weeping angel, a little weeping angel
Probably.
that's on top of there that is hauled out in the middle and the keys put in there. I don't know. Okay.
Who
Yes.
knows?
Yes,
It's
indeed.
Doctor Who. You roll with it. Um, the let's see here. Grace goes ahead and gives the Doctor Brian's shoes, and so he wants to go out and stretch them, get them to fit better. So they decide to go out for a walk, and the Doctor starts remembering a warm Gallifreyan night with his father, which is, like, we never get the Doctor's father
Hmm.
mentioned, which was cool. Um, and at this moment, as far as I'm concerned, that this is when the Doctor, or McGann, finds his Doctor, because you've got, like, he's talking about, like, Gallifrey. I remember this, and then he's like, yes, and she's like, what? And McGann just talks. He's like, these shoes, they fit perfectly. Yes. And he starts running around. And it's just like, that is such a Doctor moment. That is just, for me, it sealed the deal. It's like, okay, I'm in, I'm on board. McGann is the Doctor to me. I'm
That
sold.
moment did not have
So,
that strong of a thing, but I can recognize that. I did like the idea. I mean, I thought he did a great job of showing the switch had been flipped, and he now kind of understood what was going
mhm,
on. Yeah, good.
right. So, and then, he starts remembering stuff. Meanwhile, we got the master lying to Chang Li right out, saying, the Doctor's evil and he stole my body and all my regenerations. And he's like, oh, by the way, here's a
Yes.
bag of gold dust. And the gold dust is a reference to the Cybermen, because the Cybermen have this weakness of gold. And we kind of got that from the Tom Baker story,
Hmm.
Revenge of the Cybermen. So, there was that little nod to the fans. They enter the TARDIS cloister room, and the Master shows Chang Li the Eye of
Yes.
Harmony. Now, we haven't seen the Eye of Harmony on Doctor Who. The last time we saw it was back during the Tom Baker era in a story called The Deadly Assassin, when the Doctor goes to Gallifrey
Hmm.
and battles the Master, who wants to use the Eye of Harmony to steal the
Yes.
Doctor's regenerations. So, um, for those of you kind of playing the, reverse the polarity there, if you want to get a good taste of that, go back and watch The Deadly Assassin. It's a really good story, and
Okay.
really cool Doctor Master battle. But so we had that. The Doctor, meanwhile, remembers who he is, and he's all excited that he remembers he's the Doctor. He
Now,
kisses
now
Grace
this
in
was a
celebration.
major change in Doctor Who. So we're going to have to take a few minutes and you're going to have to
Yes, it
tell
was.
me, what were your thoughts? Were you okay
Yeah,
with that?
yeah.
Or, because in the past, the Doctor was never a sex symbol, really,
Right,
right?
right. He was treated as an asexual character,
Yes.
meaning that, just it wasn't he wasn't interested in sex. He wasn't interested in any sex as a romantic interest. He just went off and had adventures in time and space, and that was his thing. But, here we are. We're now in 1996, and starting to realize that, well, maybe if we want to get women to watch Doctor Who, we have to add a little bit of romance to the character.
Hmm.
Like, maybe some women can see themselves as the companion who gets to romanticize with the doctor, and so they can kind of put themselves in that position. And ooh, hey, the doctor is now a sex symbol.
Yes.
So, but at the time in 1996, fans were really in uproar about the idea of the doctor kissing someone, especially his companion.
Right.
So this was just like this is blasphemy. And then now here we are in 2015, and we kind of laugh about it because we've had every doctor since McGann kissing companions all
Right.
over the place. So, with the exception of Capaldi,
He has not yet, because he doesn't like the hugging.
yeah,
Yes.
right. So we can get back to a more traditional doctor with Capaldi, but we definitely had it with Eccleston, definitely with
Yes.
Tennant. Tennant was macking on every companion he could get his
Absolutely.
hands on, and with Smith. So, um, but 1996, this was a big deal. This is like a major, like, if the internet had existed at this time, I mean, this would be a trending topic on Twitter because fans would be bitching about it and going crazy in their heads over debating this back and forth. As for me, I was a little thrown with it, but it's not like he just kept kissing her. He kissed her, and then they went on with the story. So I was okay with it. It wasn't a big deal to me. I accepted that there was going to be some changes with the new doctor and the new format. So I was okay to roll with that, and that was one of those things that I just was like,
Okay.
okay, let's go with it, see where it goes. So
All right. Very
that's my
nice.
take on that.
Because I'm going from this backwards. It didn't bother me at all. It
Hmm.
was, it kind of what bothered me
Right.
more jumping ahead is her not wanting to go with him, because that normally, though, makes so much sense. I mean, why would you go, yes, let me leave my whole life and go off with this person I just met? But in the modern era, everyone, it seems like, has a chance to go with the doctor says, yeah, that sounds great.
Right. And you would think that with having a kind of a younger, more sexier looking doctor than at least more sexier looking than Sylvester McCoy,
Yes,
that you would have women maybe might find the doctor attractive.
absolutely.
So there's always that,
Mhm,
and we definitely see that with Tennant's doctor
absolutely.
and a little bit with Matt Smith's doctor.
Mhm,
And so, yeah, so this is the first time we got to see the doctor as a sex symbol, I guess.
absolutely.
Um, we had the master claiming that the doctor is half human, which is a really weird thing. This is another bit of contention with fans at the
And
time.
and I guess that is one of the reasons why they've kind of pushed it aside. And I think, and I guess they talk a lot about it in the audio, the Big Finish dramas, right? I mean, they've discussed
Right.
this.
Yeah.
And he says that line at the party, right? I'm half human on my mother's side.
Yeah. Yeah. My
Yeah.
mother's side. Right.
So,
Yeah, I think Doctor Who fandom and maybe the producers as well have pretty much unconsciously, collectively decided, okay, we're just going to ignore
yes.
that. Doesn't exist. Move along. Move
Well,
along.
rule number one,
And because yeah, the doctor
absolutely.
lies exactly. Right. So yeah, was he telling the truth? I mean, maybe he just did made that up to mess with the
Right.
professor that he took the key card from. You
Absolutely.
don't know. But I don't know why the master would make
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
claim. But anyway, we had the doctor telling Grace about the master and the TARDIS, saying that he needs an atomic clock to fix the TARDIS and close the Eye of Harmony. Um, at this point, she's starting to think he's crazy again. He tries to convince her otherwise by walking through a window from the outside into her living room. Now, you would think that a dude walking through a window without it breaking would convince you that, okay, maybe he's on the
So
level
she
here.
was a big Penn and Teller fan,
But
and so she just assumed this was an illusion. No, and I think that was,
yeah, it's
yes.
illusion and I'm fooling
There,
you and you
it was
don't
a
like it.
really good him showing that things are already starting to get crazy, and so, yeah, so that was a
Yes,
pretty cool special effect. Very nice.
right. But yes, she's still not buying it though. So when the master shows up in the ambulance, and she's like, "Well, we'll just take him away now, won't we? And lock him up somewhere so that he doesn't harm anybody." But while they're in there, the doctor's like gets hip to the master, that
Yes.
Bruce is the master, um, and the master sprays this like kind of snake venomy thing on Grace's arm that kind of burns her a little bit. Um, just before Grace and the doctor, jump out of the ambulance, and they get a hold of a cop's motorcycle, take his gun. They ditch the gun, but take the bike, and they drive that to the institute where
They
the atomic clock is. And they have a really
That
cool
was
little
that
action
was one of my
sequence here.
notes. The motorcycle
As-
ambulance chase was very well done. It was
Mhm.
nice to see. You always like seeing the doctor driving, riding a motorcycle, and so that was, yeah, I agree with it. It was a really good chase scene, pretty
Yep.
nice.
And then they show up at the institute. Uh, like the doctor gets the access key card from Professor Wag, gets the beryllium chip out, which is what he needs to reset the TARDIS clock, so that he can close the Eye of Harmony. So they get that. The Master shows up though. They have to escape. They drive the motorcycle.
Which
You know,
Another good
yeah,
adventure.
yeah.
I thought it was a very good action using the fire hose.
Yep, to descend.
Really well
Yeah,
done.
yep.
Yes, it was good.
So that was good. Um, Doctor takes Grace back to the TARDIS. They get the key out of the little cubbyhole thing that we talked about. But the cloister bell sounds. Now, my question is, was the cloister bell sounding? We know that the cloister bell sounds when there's serious trouble. Now, was it
Yes.
sounding because of the Eye of Harmony, or did the TARDIS sense that something was up with Grace?
I don't know. I think you can make the case for either one, right?
I think so too.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I
I
think
just thought it
so.
was just one of those things like, well, is it this or this? I don't know.
Yeah,
But
no, that's nice.
like the doctor installs a chip, the eye closes, but they still need to jumpstart the TARDIS. Jumpstart the TARDIS.
Yes,
But guess what? Grace gets taken over, and her eyes go all black, and she knocks out the doctor.
yes,
Wah, wah.
yeah,
The master, while the doctor's unconscious, the master decides, oh, now's the time for a fashion change.
yes.
So he goes in, I guess, the wardrobe room, and comes out wearing a very flamboyant Time Lord outfit.
Yeah.
It wasn't even anything like the classic, Gallifreyan Time Lord robes. It was more like this, just like kind of like Vegas version of
Yes.
those robes. And he's just strutting down the staircase like, "Hey, I'm the cool guy.
Absolutely.
I'm in charge. I'm large and in charge." Um, the Grace puts this like in another Jesus metaphor. She puts a crown of thorns, this device that looks like a crown of
Yes.
thorns around his head.
Right.
So you get that metaphor again, to force his eyes to stay open.
Yeah.
So
Very
so they
Clockwork Oranges looking.
yes, yes,
Really
yes.
uncomfortable to see.
Mhm.
And according to the info text, a very uncomfortable in real life for
I'm
Paul
sure.
McGann. Yes.
I'm sure, because I mean that just looked painful
Yes,
to
it
wear.
did.
Like Chang Li finally realizes that, oh, guess what? The master's a liar.
Yes.
Go figure. And so what happens? The master snaps his neck.
Yes.
Dead.
Yeah.
The master, meanwhile, then grabs Grace and kisses her to suck that whatever venom thing out of her, so that her eyes return to normal,
Mhm.
and then she can open the Eye of Harmony.
Right.
So I don't know why it was all the big deal about the doctor,
Yes. Right.
because he could have just grabbed
Or he could
Grace
have grabbed
and had
any human.
Chang Li. He had Chang Li
Yeah.
there. Why does he just do
I don't
that?
know.
But so he does that. The Eye of Harmony opens to power the transference of the regenerations, I guess. Grace is like, now that her eyes are more normal, she's kind of blind at first, but she goes back to the console room to reroute the power just as the clock is about to strike midnight. So we got our ticking clock.
Yes.
and things start going crazy. The master gets a hold of Grace though and throws her over a staircase, and she dies
Yes.
too. So we've got two
Right.
dead companions right off the bat. Um, the master and the doctor battle. The master gets sucked into the Eye of Harmony.
Yes.
No. And time starts reversing because the eye closes. Uh, and because for some weird reason they're in what was termed temporal orbit. We don't know what temporal orbit
Yes.
is, but because of it, the time gets reversed so that Grace and Chang Li
Yes.
return to life.
Just like in
Happy ending.
Superman. Yes.
It's magic.
There was
So-
a great moment. Eh, Almost any time during one of the Star Trek movies, when you hear the Star Trek fanfare, I get chills. And when she's fixing the TARDIS and you hear the sound, when it's back working, I got that thrill. I got
Yeah.
that, hair standing up, and just
Right.
it was awesome.
Well, when
Yeah,
the
and then
clock
you hear
starts turning,
then you hear
and
the,
Yep.
yes, it's
the
yeah,
wheezing,
the TARDIS, yeah, the
the
brakes
groaning.
being on.
I still, yeah, I still think Matt
Yes,
Smith does the best
absolutely.
TARDIS impression ever.
So yes, as I put in my note, the master dies in the eye, or does he? Ta-da.
Dun dun dun. Yeah, because the next time we see him, we don't see him again until he shows up in as Sir
Yes,
Jarek
right.
Jacobi in Utopia. But that's
Absolutely.
another story for another day. So anyway, the doctor sets the controls to January 1st, 2000, right when the New Year's celebrations are happening. So they get to enjoy New Year's, I guess. He warns Cheng Li not to be around at Christmas.
Yeah, that
Why?
was kind of
Just
nice.
trust me. Just
And he
trust
gets
me.
to keep the gold dust.
Yeah. And he's like, oh, okay. Yep. He gets
Yeah.
to keep the dollars. He's like, oh, thanks, Doc. Well, sorry, it was all like evil and treating or evil henchmen there for a
Yeah.
while, but okay. Um, the doctor asked Grace to go with him,
Yes.
but she asked the same
Yes,
of
it
him, which
was.
I thought was a great moment, especially for the ladies, because you're like, hey, why am I
Absolutely.
going with you? Why don't you come with me? So that was a good moment there. He's like, oh, sorry, gotta go do my time and space travel thing. Kiss you, kisses her goodbyes. See you later. I'm out of here. Goes back to the TARDIS, picks right up where
Yes.
he started this whole adventure. Goes back to his chair, kicks back, restarts reading the time machine, listening to the jazz, and then you've got the record skipping again on the word
Yes.
time. Time, time, time. And then he's
Yes.
like, oh no, not
A
again.
great, yes. A
Dun,
really
dun,
cool
dun,
ending,
dun, dun,
just
dun, dun,
so really
s-
nice. Mm. So, do you have a favorite quote?
Well, my favorite quote is, the whole "these shoes they fit perfectly." Yes,
Yes.
but I also liked the quote, "I love humans. They always see patterns in things that aren't there."
Yes. I loved Grace's doctor. I only have one life. Can you remember that?
Yes.
I just, I liked Grace a lot as a companion. Now, the actress has been in a lot of stuff. I recognized her, and I guess she played a pretty decent part in Jag with Harm. Harm,
Yeah.
had a big crush on her because she was a widow and of a friend of his, and she's been in some other stuff, and I liked her a lot. I was surprised at how Paul McGann's IMDb page before he did Doctor Who was actually pretty full.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He had done the Three Musketeers movie
Yes.
with Kiefer Sutherland, Charlie Sheen, Chris
Hmm.
O'Donnell. He's in that, and that was the first time like I went back and was like, "Oh my God, Paul McGann's in this
Yeah.
movie," which I thought was cool. And then I've seen him in other stuff, like he's every so often I'll see him on like Ripper Street or he's on Luther,
Absolutely.
and it's just always a joy to watch.
Absolutely. So how
But
about before we do our ratings, anything that we didn't cover?
yeah, I did want to point out that like the guy that plays the morgue guy,
Yes.
Pete, who gets all freaked out by the doctor leaving the refrigerator. That's Will
Okay.
Sasso. and he's the guy. He was on Mad TV, and he also which was on Fox, and then he played Curly in the Three Stooges movie remake that was here
Oh,
not too long
okay.
ago, and did a pretty good
Very
job at
nice.
that. So so if you're a Will Sasso fan, like if you're a Mad TV fan, you probably can go back and go like, oh, I didn't realize he was in
Yeah.
this, but yep, there he is.
Well,
So
the only thing else I was going to bring up is I thought it was interesting before this came out in an interview. Paul had said he was worried he'd be the George Lazenby of Doctor Who. And I guess in a way he was, because he only made the one appearance at that time. Now he's on two. But
right,
I think it's really cool how beloved he is. And I think you've said it several times in this interview. Fans really embraced his Doctor and forgave
hmm
whatever story plots or the weakness. They just embraced, and there was kind of a sadness that we didn't get to see on TV more of his adventures.
right. Um, the when the news came out that okay, Fox had decided not to pick up
Yeah,
the pilot, um, and not go to series, we were all heartbroken because like,
yeah.
oh, there's no more Doctor Who. And it was 5 years before McGann
Hmm.
returned to the role in the Big Finish audios. It was 2001. So when he decided to come back, that's pretty much what I think put Big Finish on the map,
Okay.
really, with Doctor Who fans. They were kind of into it because you had like Peter Davison, Colin Baker, and Sylvester McCoy doing them at the time, with the occasional companions. But when McGann returned, it's like, oh my
Hmm.
God, Doctor Who's continuing. This was like at the time. I mean, 2001. The show was 4 years away from
Yeah.
returning in for real. So when 2001 happened, like and McGann returned, as far as we knew, this was it. This is all the new Doctor Who
Right.
we were ever going to get, and but we were finally getting a continuation of the Eighth Doctor. So as far as we were
Hmm.
concerned, it counted,
Right.
because there was nothing else to compete with it. Yeah. Now, when the show did come back in 2005, a lot of fans said to themselves, "Well, I guess these don't count because the TV show is
But
back."
uh,
But 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 wisely, Stephen Moffat
yes.
incorporated that in The Night of the Doctor when he had the Eighth Doctor reference his Big Finish audio companions. So it's like, hey, guess what? Those audio adventures that you think
Yeah.
didn't matter, well, guess what? They're canon. And we just made them official canon
Yeah.
by mentioning
The
them in the
only other,
TV series.
yeah, the other
So
thing I wanted to bring up is there
that
was a
was
point when the Doctor is captured, and he tells Grace, he goes, "Run, Grace, run." And I thought that was really cool,
yeah,
just because if if there was one word for the modern era, it's run, right? Run, Rose, run. And so it
yeah,
was very
right,
cool.
right. Now if you notice, when the Doctor and Grace are racing to the police bike from
Yeah.
the institute, they're holding hands as they run, and that moment is directly lifted
Hmm.
for the episode Rose, where you have the Ninth Doctor taking
Yeah.
Rose Tyler's hand and running,
Yes.
and almost pretty much the same shot for shot as
Yeah.
they cross
It was
the
very cool.
Westminster Bridge. So that was
Absolutely.
cool. So and I think that Russell T Davies, he probably, like when he was planning Doctor Who's return, he watched the TV movie and he's probably figuring out in his head, well, what okay, this works, but this
Yeah.
doesn't work. I love seeing the kiss, so let's have that. Um, and I love the fact that we've got a much bigger, more detailed, sophisticated TARDIS interior and stuff like that. So he was, I'm sure he was
Right.
inspired, or at least figured, okay, what didn't
And
work
and we have talked about
and what
this, and
what to
so
leave
take a
out.
drink if for those of you playing the next stop everywhere drinking game. Um, James Robinson Starman that we
Yep.
both love. I just love that
Yeah.
Russell T Davies and Stephen
Yes.
Moffat both are. We're not going to ignore everything. We are going to weave in the continuity and what's going on as much as we can. And I think one of the great things about the 50th anniversary is the little prequel, but the idea that each Doctor was followed by the other ones. This is one long journey. Yeah, it's one person and it's one story.
One person.
So
Yeah, it's
yes,
hmm yeah, it's all the same saga. Just there's
yeah,
just more layers, more of it added to the mythos. And I mean,
yeah,
Doctor Who could have obviously turned out very different. We could have had a reboot.
yeah,
We could have had several reboots. We could
right,
have had a reboot with the 1996 movie. We could have had
yeah,
a reboot in 2005. But thankfully we didn't. And I think Doctor Who is better off for it because
yes,
it encourages fans to go back and check out that old stuff that they
yeah,
may not have, like, well, if it was a reboot, it wouldn't have mattered to them.
right,
It would have been like if new fans of Star Trek, the new movies with Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto, if they decided, well, it's not
right,
Star Trek because it doesn't feature Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto.
right.
So even though we're like, oh, how can you not count the stuff with Shatner and
Yeah,
Nimoy?
and I think they found a good way to say, this is they had established in the original series alternate timelines happen, and they did it in Next
Hmm.
Generation. So they took they took something and said, we've already talked about this, so now then we've created an alternate timeline. So all those adventures you've seen and loved
Yep,
happened. It mattered, but
matter.
now
They
then we
matter.
have it. We are not
Yep,
shackled by that. Um, yeah.
right.
So, but I think there is something special about the idea that when Capaldi and Smith and Tennant and Eccleston all look to develop their character, they can look at the previous and see what did they do and what can I lift from that to make me to have that continuity. So, great
Yeah.
stuff.
So what was your rating for this episode?
I gave it 8. Hold on, I want to make sure I get this right. 8 brown paper bags filled with stuff.
Nice. Nice. I give this one also 8.
Yes,
I give it 8 out of 10 Eyes of Harmony.
very nice.
So,
Yeah, really, really a nice way to kind of end this phase of our reverse the polarity. I know we're going back again, and
mhm.
we've got a plan going forward, but this is kind of really just a great frosting on our
Yep.
our journey here.
Yeah,
Um,
because this is essentially the end of the classic era of Doctor Who. So
yes,
it's a great closing point for this part.
absolutely. I have a reverse polarity for you, but it's a
Okay.
different one.
All right.
We've already done Rose, and this was
Yeah.
Rose was Cement. So I went totally
Right.
different and
Uh-huh.
said you should go check out Fragments from Torchwood. So
Hmm.
kind of cheating a little, but it is
Yeah.
also set on New Year's Eve.
Okay.
It gives a background story of the different Torchwood characters.
Okay.
We get to see Jack interacting, talking about the Doctor, and so I went through quickly looking at all the series, and I couldn't find anyone that specifically had either a New Year's Eve theme or I didn't want to give one of the other master episodes because this was
Yeah.
different. So I kind of came with this ones. And so if you have not watched Torchwood, and I have shared this, I got through the Doctor via Torchwood. I think it's a good thing to explore and see.
Right. I think so too. And I love your creativity in your
Thank
selection.
you, Charles.
I went I went the more obvious route. I just decided, okay, how about watching The Night of the Doctor
Uh, you know,
as the perfect
but I said
it's bookended.
it's only a short thing.
I know it's only
So that's
6.
the reason. But I
I
thought
know
about
6.
that. Yes, perfect.
Okay, how about
Yes,
watching
indeed,
both? There you go.
absolutely.
You just watch both.
Yes, good
All
deal.
right. S- So yeah, next time I think we're only gonna come back. I don't know if Jesse's still on board with this plan, but I'd like to come back in just a
Hmm.
week before a certain someone goes on
Absolutely,
vacation. So, and I'd like us to review
absolutely.
Rose because, as some of you probably know, the 10th anniversary of Rose's the first airing of Rose, and which means the 10th anniversary of the return of Doctor Who in 2005 is coming up on March 26th. So somewhere like just after that on the weekend, hopefully we can talk about Rose. It's only 45 minutes, so it won't be as much of a burden as watching these hour and a half
No,
classic
I think that is a
stories.
great idea. I agree with, I guess Russell T Davies was talked about. It's kind of, he feels it was kind of anticlimactic to celebrate a 10-year anniversary after you just did the 50th. But I do think
Right,
for our
right.
purpose, and since we've talked about Rose so much, I think it'll be really good. Charles has picked some modern episodes we're going to go through, and we're also going to do some Big Finish. So I have never listened to them, so we're going to pick a few and listen to that and kind of enjoy. And then I also want to talk about some comic books. And now, Charles, did you pick up all the Kindle singles for the 50th anniversary? That each, like Neil Gaiman did one. There was a different short story for every Doctor.
Oh, no, I did. I got
Okay.
Neil Gaiman's, but that was the only one that registered because I was like, I don't know any of the other authors, and
Yeah.
I've got a lot of stuff I want to
Okay.
read, so I just read Neil
Okay.
Gaiman's. I downloaded that one, um, but we can talk about that one if you want. But
Okay. That might be an
yeah,
assignment for you to go check that out.
nothing o'clock. But
Yeah. So
yeah,
so that's good. So Charles, where can we find you?
you can find me all over the internets. I'm at Charles Skaggs on Twitter. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, the Google Plus for all you crazy kids on the Google Plus, and my blog of geeky things, Damn Good Coffee and Hot, where I talk about our favorite TV show, Doctor Who.
I am at JWJ170104. And we have a Facebook page, Next Stop
Hmm.
Everywhere. We are at Next Stop SMG on Twitter and Next Stop Everywhere SMG at gmail.com. We are planning to have Devin Pike back on. The last weekend of May, Comic Expo here in Dallas is doing a Who Ganza. They have
Ugh,
three of the they have
I cringe. I cringe at that title.
yes, tons of Doctor Who guests coming, and so we're going to have him come talk about that, and we'll keep you going. So, Charles, thank you. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for your guidance through this classic Who, and it's always
Yep.
fun.
And thank you for having the cojones to go through it with me, to go back and maybe watch some things you might not have sought out on your own. Um, I hope you enjoyed some of them. I realize you may not have enjoyed all of them, but I hope you enjoyed them and can uh, kind of appreciate the modern era from a little different perspective because you've watched these episodes
Yeah, and I really do think that's one of the reasons why I liked this movie more
this time.
is because I've done this. I really have. Yeah, and so and besides, even if the episode isn't fun, it's always fun talking Doctor Who with you. So thank you, listeners. Please go to iTunes, give us reviews, ratings, give us your feedback. Tell us what you'd like to talk about. And we will say for now, keep hope alive, and everything has got to end sometime. Otherwise, nothing will ever get started. Thank you guys, and we will talk to you soon.